Howdy ho, Andrew here. Welcome to the Onion Buns and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk. So, this week we've lost a couple of very renowned names in celebrity circles. But before that, here's a short message. Hey all, just a quick mention here. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment on the videos you like. It helps with the YouTube algorithm, which helps me. Takes 2 seconds. So thanks in advance. Alrighty, so this week we've lost a couple of renowned names. Yeah, that's legitimate. One musician, pro wrestler, and then a actor, but I'm not going to talk about the actor. It was Theo Huxtable, Malcolm. I don't even know the rest of his name. The only thing I know him from was the Cosby Show, so, rest in peace, Theo, but really nothing to add for him. Ozzy, world famous, Hall of Fame musician. There's no other way about it. Ozzy was so instrumental in rock and roll. He really was. And my brother was a professional musician, for those of you that don't know. And when we were teenagers, he got a hold of Ozzy, and oh my God, I woke up for a year straight to Crazy Train. I love the song, but you get woken up every day for a year straight to Crazy Train and see how much you like it. So, I know everything about Ozzy music-wise. My brother knows everything about Ozzy wise, but I know his music and I loved his music. Absolutely loved it, and he was such a character. Don't have much use for his family, to be quite honest, but him and his music, amazing. Rest in peace, Ozzy. You left your mark on the world, and it was a positive mark. It really was. And your music, I have no doubt, will last the test of time. And in 100 years, it'll still get played on radio or digital or whatever format they have in 100 years. And then there's the one I want to talk about. Or, well, really, I don't want to talk about Hulk Hogan. I want to talk about pro wrestling. But I'll touch on Hogan. I really don't have much good to say about Hogan. I really don't. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to somebody that died. I didn't like him as a wrestler. I don't like him as a human being. And yeah, I really don't have much to say about him. I'm not going to shit on him because he just passed away, so I'm not going to sit here and shit on him, but I'm not going to lie either. I don't have anything positive to say about him, so we're just going to leave that at that. But I was listening to a local radio show earlier today, and they were talking about pro wrestling, and they had some ESPN goof on who apparently he wrote a book, but what he was saying to Jason Greger, I was just shaking my head going have you even watched wrestling, buddy? I don't get these guys. I really don't. Some of these guys nowadays, I don't get them. But for me, the one thing I'll say about Hogan is he had charisma and he knew how to get the fans behind him. And in pro wrestling, that's half the battle right there. Maybe more than half. You look at how successful he was because he didn't have a lick of wrestling skill. His matches were boring beyond belief, in my opinion, but he had charisma and he knew how to get those fans riled up and supporting him. So I was listening to this ESPN guy talk, and I'm sure I could find his name, but I'm not going to bother because honestly, him and his book don't deserve any free press. They really don't. The crap he was saying, I was just driving, shaking my head, going, buddy, did you even watch wrestling? It was just stupid. Like the climax of his conversation with Gregor is they were talking about like, what are two tag teams you would have liked to seen wrestle? And he goes, the Rock and Roll Express. Okay, the Rock and Roll Express are a bona fide top 10, in some people's eyes, top 1. So you go from 10 to 1, depending who you're talking to, tag team of all time. Like they were excellent. But then he goes, oh, I would have loved to see them wrestle the Young Bucks. I just like, I damn near shut my radio off right then. Like, the Young Bucks are a crappy team. They're horrible. First off, they don't look like wrestlers. They look like 150-pound soaking wet kids. Teenage kids that painted some scruff on their face. You know, no, they're older. They're almost 40 now, apparently, but that's what they look like. Like, they don't look like pro wrestlers. They've never looked like pro wrestlers. And they couldn't tell a story in that ring if you beat them with a bat. Like, they don't comprehend it. They have no comprehension of how to get fans behind them, how to tell a story in the ring. You know, to them, they're just the modern day spot monkeys. Okay, I do this move, and then I'll walk over here, and you do this move, then we'll walk over here, and then I'll do this move, and then we'll walk, and they'll do that. That's all their matches are. It's just here, here, here. It's like connect the dots. That's what their matches are. They're connect the dots. You know, there's no psychology. There's no ring psychology to them. There's no storyline to them. There's no passion to them. It's just move, 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 move. I find that so insanely boring. I really do. So, yeah. So anyway, they were talking about this, and, you know, the ESPN guy was an idiot, but some of the questions Gregor was asking were good. So, as I've said, I'll link the video, but I almost became a pro wrestler when I was 20 years old. 2021, I forget the exact year now. Here in Edmonton, I went to a local Stampede Wrestling show in Edmonton, and afterwards I started talking to Brian Pillman, rest in peace, Brian, and we talked for about 10 minutes or so, and then he called Bruce Hart over, and I talked to Bruce Hart for another 3 or 4 minutes, and I was invited to go train at the Hart Dungeon in Calgary. I just had to get myself down there. I never did get myself down there, and that's on me, nobody else. And yeah, but I came that close. So pro wrestling's been a passion of mine for a long, long time, until recently. Nowadays, I really can't watch the product anymore. But Gregor said something interesting, and it's true. He said, be it music or art or whatever, you're always biased to what you grew up on. And I thought about that, and I'm like, yeah, that's accurate. You know, I grew up on 70s and 80s wrestling for the most part, and a bit of the 90s, but 70s and 80s for the most part. And I never got into that whole ECW stuff where the death matches and the hardcore wrestling. Like, to me, that wasn't wrestling. You have a hardcore match as the culmination of a feud. Like in Calgary, Stampede, they were famous for coal miner on a glove matches, where they put Duke Meyer's coal miner glove up on a pole, and the wrestlers would, you know, they'd fight, and one would grab the glove and they'd beat the bejesus out of each other, and it'd be bloody. But that was a special event. You didn't see that every single week, or you didn't see it 5 out of 7 matches every single week. You saw it once every 3 months, once every 4 months. It was the culmination of the storyline and the feud. You know, you start here and you build up to here. And that's what's missing in modern day wrestling. Modern day wrestling has no build-up. It's you start here, you end. Well, actually, they never reach here anymore. You start here and you end here. And everything in the middle is exactly the same as here and here. That's boring, people. That's boring. Like, imagine if you had to eat craft dinner every single day of the year. You would get bored of craft dinner. And that's modern day wrestling. It's the exact same thing. There's nothing special about it. It's spot monkeys. They're doing spots. They're, as I said with the Young Bucks, they go, follow the dots. Go here to 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 here. Just doing spots. You know, there. If you watch close enough, in AEW specifically, you can actually see the guys go, they'll take a move and then he'll stand up and he'll walk over to the other side of the ring and he'll stand there and he'll wait until it's the next move. And that could be anywhere from 10 seconds to a minute, and he'll just stand there waiting. Not playing to the crowd, not doing anything. He's just standing there waiting for his next move. And that's modern wrestling. And I don't think that's good. I really don't. I don't care what anyone says. I don't think that's a good product. I like the 70s and 80s where they told the story, where, you know, the villain, the dastardly villain, did the dastardly deeds to the babyface hero, and the babyface hero had to fight back beyond all odds. And as I said, they started here and they escalated it up to here, and that was accumulation match. You know, the coal miner on the glove, the cage match, the lumberjack match. You know, it was a specialty match, but they didn't start with that. They ended with that, and they built to it. You know, and that's, in my opinion, that's what's missing in modern wrestling. But beyond that is like, they were talking, Gregor was talking about, he, as a young kid, he'd go to the Edmonton Gardens, and, you know, the heel wrestlers would be walking to the ring, and old ladies would be spitting on them, and guys would be throwing stuff out. They were so invested in the product, like they had bought in. And that's something, again, you don't see in modern day wrestling. There's no buy-in by the fans. The fans are more interested in carrying signs and doing stupid chants than they are, you know, being invested in the characters or the matches. You know, like I remember a story by Bad News Allen. Again, rest in peace. Bad News was saying when he was in the Florida territory, he was walking out and the worst injury he ever sustained was from an 80-year-old woman. She was sitting ringside with her knitting needles, and when he came out, she took those needles and stabbed him in his liver, and he had to be rushed to the hospital. She hated him that much. Now, I'm not supporting fans stabbing wrestlers, just so we're clear. You know, I am not supporting that. What I am supporting is the fact that he got that woman so angry at him, so invested in hating him, that she did what would be normally unthinkable. And, you know, and if you listen back to the old stories of the territories, that was pretty commonplace. Like Jim Cornette was telling a story once, and those that don't know, Jim Cornette is one of the best managers, pro wrestling managers of all time. Him and Bobby Heenan, in my opinion, rank 1 and 2. And he had the Midnight Express, and they were out at this redneck town in the Atlanta, Georgia region in Georgia. And they got the fans so riled up that they came out of the arena, and I forget how many said, but I want to say 20 to 30 fans had surrounded their vehicles, and they weren't going to let them get to their vehicles. And Cornette and the Midnight Express are like, well, how the hell do we get through this? And, you know, and the Rock and Roll Express, who they had been fighting, they were the baby faces. And back then, the baby faces were in their own locker room, and the heels were in their own locker room. And they were usually on the opposite ends of the venue, because it was all about presenting an image of this being legitimate, something modern wrestling has forgotten all about nowadays. So the Rock and Roll Express came out of their exit, and they got in their vehicle and they came around the corner and they saw this mob, and this mob was going to kill Cornette and the Midnight Express. So the Rock and Roll Express came around and they floored their car and they drove through the mob, forcing the mob to dive out of the way. And this gave the Cornette and the Midnight Express enough time to get in their vehicle and drive off. You know, so the Rock and Roll Express couldn't interfere on behalf of Cornette in that, but the mob didn't know who it was. It was late at night. Most of them were drunk. They didn't know who the Babyface's vehicles were because they didn't, you know, they liked the Babyfaces. They weren't out to get the Babyfaces. But, you know, this is, again, Cornette and the Midnight Express had riled these people up so much that they wanted to do actual damage. And Cornette tells other stories where they actually had to get a police escort to drive. They would park their vehicles like 10 miles away from the arena and then get driven in by the police, and then the police would drive them out to their vehicles so they could leave the town. Because the fans were that rabid. They were so invested in hating these guys. And again, you don't see that nowadays. You know, nowadays it's about the cool slogans. You know, John Cena coming out, or Kurt Angle, "You suck, Chance." And, you know, there's no pure hatred by the fans. And in my opinion, that hurts the product nowadays. Like, that emotional investment is what you want in pro wrestling. You know, you want them cheering the baby faces and you want them booing the heels. You know, and there's other wrestlers that have spoken where they've said, you know, like, I forget who it was now, but he was telling the story. And he's like, okay, we can only get the fans to this level. Don't take them past this level, because if they go past this level, we can't control it and they're going to rush the ring. So only take them up to this level. And like, this was a part of the talent, the knowledge of the wrestlers in those days. They knew what they were doing. They knew the buttons they were pushing. And for those wrestlers that didn't understand this and went over that, bad things happened to them at the hands of the fans. You know, so it was a skill to be able to get the fans up to this point, but then stop. So you don't push them over that breaking point. You know, and yeah, you know, that to me is pro wrestling. That is an art form. That is skill, talent, ability, you know, and that's missing from today's product. Today's product is like, well, even the WWE is guilty of it. It's just slogans and music, and, you know, it really is entertainment now rather than a sporting spectacle. Yeah. Now, I will admit that modern day wrestlers, the most part, are in better shape than the wrestlers in the 70s and the 80s. Like in the 70s and 80s, you had a lot of big men, but they were fat. You know, nowadays, most wrestlers, not all, most wrestlers are in shape. Unfortunately, a great majority of them, like, they can scare you in a dark alley. It's like, I always say, Jim the Anvil Neidhart. I never wanted to run into him in a dark alley. You know, just no. Or Bad News Allen, again. Never wanted to run into him in a dark alley, or One Man Gang, or, you know, you can go through a host of names from the 70s and 80s of heels, and it's like, I don't know if they could fight, but they looked scary. They looked the part. Nowadays, I look, there's a heel in AEW, used to be called Jungle Boy, Jack Perry. I mean, he might come up to here on me, you know, and if he's over 145 pounds, I don't believe you. You know, it's like, I'm sorry, you don't cause me to buy what you're selling. I don't think you could beat your way out of a wet paper bag. Same with the Young Bucks. Same with Darby Allin. Same, and the list goes on. Leo Rush, and the list goes on and on and on and on. they don't look like wrestlers anymore. Is the funniest thing, one of the funniest things I've seen in a long time is Chris Jericho. Now, Chris Jericho, when he broke in, was considered small. And it actually challenged him in his career. Like, it took him a long time. He had to go to Mexico and he had to go to Japan. And he spent a lot of years before he got a chance in WCW in the Cruiserweight division, because he was considered too small for pro wrestling. Fast forward to today in AEW, he looks like frickin' Andre the Giant compared to the other wrestlers that he's wrestling. So here you got a guy that was considered too small in the 90s, and he's like one of the biggest guys on the roster now. You know, that's how pro wrestling has changed, and I'm sorry, I just don't buy into it. You know, part of pro wrestling is you gotta look the part. Hogan looked the part. Hogan had charisma. You know, he was crap in the ring, but he had charisma and he looked the part. And with that, that's all he needed. Goldberg can't wrestle worth a crap. He's probably one of the worst wrestlers I've ever seen in my life. Like Dutch Mantel will always go on and on about Goulas as being the worst wrestler. Well, I don't remember Goulas, mainly because back then we didn't get the Memphis territory on TV, but I've seen some of Goulas's matches, and he wasn't good, but I don't think he was any worse than Goldberg. Like, Goldberg's horrible. But Goldberg was big, and Goldberg was booked properly to get him over. That's all it was. Size matters. It's a cliche, but in pro wrestling, size matters. You know, McMahon was not wrong in this. To a point, he wasn't wrong. Like, you look at some of the small wrestlers he eventually did take in. Chris Jericho, excellent wrestler in his day. Horrible nowadays, but back then he was excellent. Chris Benoit, I know we're not supposed to say his name, but he was an amazing ring tactician. Amazing. But he was considered small as well. Eddie Guerrero, he was like 5'6". So, you know, there was exceptions to the rule, but they were exceptions. By and far, size matters. You know, so yeah, it just got me thinking, you know, and it's a trending topic right now because of the Hogan's death and everything. And I mean, if you want to know about Hogan, you can go Google it. All of his mistakes and travesties and screw ups are well documented online. You can go Google them up. So I'm not going to carry through on them and shit on somebody that's died. But, you know, as a wrestler, he had charisma and he had size. And that's all he ever needed. Plus, he got booked very well by Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon booked him like an absolute star, and he became an absolute star for it. I think the funniest thing I heard today, though, was Gregor. Oh, yeah, Hogan got, he was a celebrity and he got all the movies. Have you seen Hulk Hogan's movies? Oh, my God. Those I will crap on. Santa with muscles. We are talking some of the worst, all-time worst B and C grade movies ever made. I wouldn't be bragging about Hulk Hogan's movie career. No Holds Barred. Oh, like, one of my favorite movies of all time is a B grade movie starring Rowdy Roddy Piper. Now, it is pure camp. It's called Hell Comes to Frogtown. It is 100% pure camp, B grade, low budget, 80s direct-to-video movie. Roddy Piper is the last man on the face of the earth who is fertile. He can impregnate women. So he has to fight mutant frogs to save a harem of women and get them pregnant. This really was the premise for the movie. This movie is Schindler's List compared to Santas with Muscles or No Holds Barred. Think about that. Mutant frogs, where Piper eye pokes the frog, is Schindler's List compared to Hogan's movies. That's how bad Hogan's movies were. So I don't know about what Gregor's talking about, but I wouldn't be bragging about Hogan's movies. Not in a million years. So anyway, yeah, so that's my Let's Talk this week. I wanted to talk about pro wrestling. What it was back in the day compared to what it is nowadays. Like I said, the topic is trending right now because of Hogan's death. But I would love to see even one federation return to 1980s. Now, I'm not talking about the stupid characters that Vince McMahon loved, like the Goon and Outback Jack and, all the stupid characters. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the wrestling. You go out in the ring, you look intimidating, first off, so people can buy you in that role. Then you go out and you build a storyline. You start here and you build it up until you get up here, and then you have your big special attraction match. I got to be honest, I don't even watch WWE anymore. I stopped watching AEW years ago because it's always the same crap. And now in the WWE, you got The Rock as a investor, big uppity up, so all of his family are given the belts, and I have absolutely, there's 2 members of The Rock's family I want to see with belts. The rest of them, I'm not paying to see that crap. Just not. And those 2 people are Roman Reigns and Jacob Fatu. And you could probably say Solo Sikoa, but that's it. The rest of them should never, they should never have a belt, with one exception. If you put Jimmy and Jay back together as a tag team and you told them to stop the indie crap, they could be tag team champions again. But that's it. The rest of his family should never even get a sniff of a belt. They're not good. They're really not. But that's politics. Pro wrestling politics, not politics. That's all that is. And, not interested in that crap. And as much as I bash that, it's still better than the crap you get on AEW. So, WWE is Hell Comes to Frogtown. AEW is Hogan's movies. So I would love to see a federation come out and just give us 1980s style matches. You build characters, you build feuds, you play off the emotions of the audience. You get them invested. That, to me, that would be perfection. But I don't think that's ever going to happen because WWE is making huge amounts of money. Record-breaking money doing it this way, so they're not going to change. AEW can't break even for its life, so they would be dead already if it wasn't for a billionaire son having access to his daddy's money. So anyway, so that's my video for this week. If you like the video, leave a like, a subscribe, and a share. I'm trying to grow my channel, and a like, a subscribe, and a share does me wonders, and I do appreciate it. Always feel free to leave a comment. I encourage everybody to leave a comment. Let's have a conversation, people. It's open. All you got to do is do the comment and we will have a conversation. And also by leaving a comment, you really do help me with the YouTube algorithm and getting more eyes on my videos. And as always, pew, 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 and shit. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye.